Hello, everyone, and welcome to Trader Carology, the science of selling cars, our spring edition. You might remember the last time we were together was back in December. Had a great event with many, many insights from both inside and outside of our organization here at Trader. And we're back to bring some more of those insights and outlooks again in this spring edition. So, we know that it's starting to feel like spring when we start to see demand for cars and car buyers starting to increase with that seasonality. The days are getting longer and we can hear the birds singing in the morning. And if you're anything like me, these kind of pastel colors start working their way towards the front of the closet. That's how we know it's spring, and that's how we know it's time for another Trader Carology. So I'm going to be your host for today. I'm MacDonald. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Trader Corporation. And we're going to be together for a couple of hours today. We've got 4 fantastic speakers lined up, as I mentioned, a combination of from within Trader and external to Trader. And just a couple of housekeeping things before we get into the content. As we go through today, there's a couple of things to note. First thing is questions. So we do invite and welcome as many questions as you have about any of the speakers today. We're going to save these for a Q&A session at the end of all the speakers, so around that 3 o'clock mark. But please feel free to ask your question while it's fresh in your mind at any time throughout the speakers and the event today. So you'll be able to do that by following the instructions here. You click on the Q&A icon. It'll be on the right-hand side of your webcast window. You may need to exit full screen if you're in full screen mode in order to see that. But as you can see on the slide here, you click that Q&A, enter your question, and then we will do our best to answer all the questions at the end, and all the speakers will be sticking around to answer those questions too. The second thing is that we're going to have a couple of polls as we go through the event. So these are going to be simple questions based on the content that's been presented, just to kind of check, I guess, that everyone's engaged and listening and paying attention. But more importantly, do you have the chance to win some Amazon gift cards by participating in those polls? So it takes a couple of seconds. Why not? Maybe get the chance to win a couple $100 in Amazon gift cards ready for the spring and the summer. And so participation in those polls is supported by the same function. Again, on the right-hand side of the webcast window, you'll see the button with polls. When they're live, click on the poll and submit your answer. You get it right, you go into the draw for the prize. One other thing to mention is that we're going to be together, as I mentioned, for a couple of hours today. And if you do need to drop out at any point or anything like that, don't worry, because the event will be available recorded and therefore on demand in a few days' time. So if you need to drop off and come back, whatever it might be, you'll always have the opportunity to rewatch anything that you missed in the coming days, and we'll email you a link to do so. So with that said, I think we'll take a look at the agenda next. Fantastic. So as I mentioned, 4 speakers today, but what are they going to be telling us about? So first up, we're going to have Baris Akyurek. Baris is our Director of Marketing Intelligence here at Trader. Baris spends a lot of his time looking out there, looking at various economic reports, what's happening globally, what's happening within the auto industry, and then contextualizing that within what we see within our own business. And as you know, obviously with the size of our marketplace, we are able to act as that kind of barometer and understand consumer demand and what users are looking for. Baris is the guy that ties it all together. And so he's going to take us through the Canadian auto market insights and the outlook for our industry, which obviously we all have a very vested interest in. So going to be really interesting to see with the pandemic and everything that's going on economically and whatnot, what the outlook is for the automotive industry here in Canada. After Baris, we're going to hear from Bryan Segal, and I'm so happy to have Bryan with us. Bryan is representing Comscore, which is globally one of the most respected third-party measurement platforms, digital measurement platforms. Comscore, for those that haven't heard of it, essentially they measure almost everything that's going on the internet, what websites are being most visited, for how long, and different intents of users and the way that users are using the internet and how is that differing by platform over time. Just incredible insights. And as I mentioned, Comscore, completely trusted, kind of independent third party. So delighted to welcome Bryan along to take us through the Comscore methodology. How do they do all this? How does the magic happen? But then also for Canadian online automotive industry, and yes, marketplaces within that, but more generally the industry, how's it going? And again, kind of what might the outlook be? And after Bryan, again, delighted to be joined by one of our dealer partners in this edition of Carology, Cathie Pattinson, dealer principal of One Price Used Car Superstore. So becoming a little bit more operational, a little bit closer to home for those dealers that are in the audience today. And Cathie's going to be talking about the automotive ice age, post-pandemic adaptations to selling used cars. So a lot of things that I think many listeners today will sympathize with and will resonate with you, as Cathie will take us through her experience over the last year or so, which has been an interesting one to say the least, and how things have been going over there at One Price Used Car Superstore and some of the lessons that Cathie has learned. Really great operational stuff that we can all relate to. And then lastly, but certainly not leastly, we'll have Andrew Tai, CEO of Motoinsight. Motoinsight, the company that is evolving the way that cars are sold, not just here in Canada, but in other countries as well. At the OEM level, at the dealership level, Motoinsight really looking towards the future and some incredibly exciting stuff that they're developing and some incredible results that dealers and OEMs are achieving by working with Andrew and the guys at Motoinsight. So Andrew will be taking us through learnings for dealers from online marketplace giants. Obviously, with the pandemic and whatnot, big changes in consumer expectations, big changes in the way that we in the automotive industry need to adapt our thinking and operate maybe a little bit differently. And there's other verticals that have been digitizing and moving to this way of transacting for quite some time. So what are some of the lessons that we can learn from the big guys, the experts, the ones that have done incredibly well with those kind of transitions in other verticals? So very much looking forward to that. And then, as I mentioned, lastly, we will have our Q&A session where you can ask a question about any of the content that you've heard today, or indeed any question that you would like to ask any of these expert speakers or myself. So with that said, I think we should get straight to some content here. And so first of all, I'm going to introduce and hand over to Baris Akyurek, who's going to take us through that Canadian auto market insights, but also the outlook for the future. What's coming down the pike here for us here in Canada, for those of us in the auto game. So with that said, without further ado, Baris, if you unmute yourself, please take it away.
All right. Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. So today, I'm going to talk to you guys about two things. One, as Ian mentioned, I'd like to give you a high-level overview of what we are seeing in the Canadian economy as it pertains to our sector. And then I'm going to be talking about the data from our AutoTrader price index, and I will be talking about used vehicles and how they're trending. So the Canadian economy, I don't know how to start, to be honest with you. There has been a lot of things going on, microchip shortages, factory closures, first wave, second wave, the increased demand, the prices. There's quite a few different things going on, and there's a lot of chatter about the economy, about a lot of these components. But what we have yet to see is a holistic view of what's happening in the market as a whole. So my goal today is to stitch together the story to tell you what's happening, what we believe is happening in the automotive sector. So starting with the GDP, gross domestic product, it's the monetary value of all goods and services produced in a certain period of time. Looking at China, obviously that got hit first, bounced back pretty strongly from their pre-COVID levels, GDP levels in the last few quarters. So in fact, their growth levels, year-over-year growth levels, is actually above where they were before the pandemic started. When we look at other major markets like ours, Canada, US, Australia, Germany, like the trends seem to be pretty similar. The trajectory is similar, like the first dip, and then things seem to be improving slowly. So RBC forecasted the Canadian GDP, and what they found is that uh, how 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 efficiently and how quickly we vaccinate has a lot to do with the GDP growth. But regardless whether we are highly effective or moderately effective, the belief is that we will go back to pre uh, pre-COVID GDP levels by the end of this year. But so I want to concentrate a little bit more now on the more recent data. So again, RBC, obviously they have access to billions of dollars worth of transactions from their credit cards and debit cards, and they have been keeping an eye on overall retail spend. So compared to where we were in February 2020, the overall spend has gone up by quite a bit. This data that you're looking at is from March 25th, and we are up. The overall retail spend is up by almost 13%. So when there are no lockdowns, the spend goes up. When there's a lockdown, spend goes down. This actually happened during the first wave as well. But concentrating a little bit more on something that's closer to our industry, looking at gasoline station spend and all that stuff, like the growth is actually bigger, larger. So again, as of March 25th, the overall spend at gas stations is at 33% above where we were in February 2020. So I don't know if you guys joined the last Carology event, but we shared that consumers are now less interested in public transportation and ride sharing services because of obvious reasons. And so we believe that they see their vehicles as their safe havens, and wherever they need to go, they take their cars and they tend to drive more for recreational stuff rather than going back and forth from work. So there's when you look at these graphs, like there's a lot of spend. There's things seem to be improving, which is great news. But you probably might be asking yourself, where is this money coming from? So this chart, when I first saw this, I was very surprised. So the graph on the top shows household savings rate going back 25 years. Okay, so pre-pandemic, Canadians were able to save 2.8% of their entire savings, their discretionary money. But once the pandemic hit, with all the vacation stuff and restaurants and all that stuff, it went up to 28%. 28%, almost 1/3 of the money was sitting in Canadians' savings accounts when the pandemic first hit. Now, it's come down a little bit. By the end of January 2021, we are at 12.7% because consumers are spending more money on renovations. They are paying off their bad debt, the high interest rate. So it's coming down. It's come down quite a bit. So Bank of Canada estimates that this additional money, extra money in the economy, is around $100 billion. So I'm just going to repeat that, $100 billion. So there's a lot of money idle money sitting in consumers' bank accounts. RBC also, what they did is they forecasted how the household savings rate is going to behave in the next few quarters. And they believe that the estimate is that we would go back to almost pre-COVID levels by the end of 2021. It's expected to sit around 4%. Now, I have to be honest. When I saw this, right, I thought it was too aggressive, right? Like there's this $100 billion in the economy, and it's expected to be spent in the next few quarters. I questioned it. So what we did was we looked at previous financial downturns and see what happened to the savings rate in the previous downturns. So with the exception of the 2008 and 2009 one, the last recession, right? Looking back to 1981, the energy crisis because of the Iranian Revolution. looking at the Gulf War in the 1990s, the dot-com bubble and the 9/11 in the 2000, every single time the savings rate went back to its previous levels within a year. Now, you'll say, well, what about the 2008 and 2009 one? It's the nature of that downturn is different because it doesn't have a lot to do with like what we are going through right now, all the restrictions and health concerns and whatnot. So the nature of that was different. So again, going back to what RBC's forecasted and looking at the previous downturns, we believe that the rate consumers are going to keep spending the money that they have in their savings account. So what, right? So what about it? So what we did was our research team worked with a third-party research company, and we wanted to understand how this additional money is going to impact our own sector. So we asked Canadians who are planning to buy a vehicle in the next 6 months, we asked them whether they have saved any money during the pandemic. And almost half of these people, 45% said that they did, which is good. But the more interesting finding here is that 64% of these consumers who saved money, they said that they're planning to use these extra savings to purchase a vehicle. 64% of them, big number. What's more interesting is that 29%, almost 1/3 of these people said that they weren't planning to buy a vehicle before COVID, but now they do because they have these additional savings sitting in their savings account. So we believe this additional money in the Canadians' accounts have created this quote unquote new demand that's going to come into our sector. And lastly, those people who said that who would be buying a car in the next 6 months by using this money, this additional money, almost a quarter of them said that they would be buying a more expensive vehicle. So I was looking at this report that came out from De Rosier, and they showed the new car sales by segment, and luxury SUVs and sports cars actually outperformed the market in the last quarter. So this phenomena is already happening, and we can see it in the data. So now I want to segue into something related to what we have been talking about, and I'm going to talk about used vehicle prices, how they're trending in Canada. So we have 450,000 vehicles in our marketplace, and we build an algorithm that uses the data that's derived from our inventory, and we'll look at average prices on a daily basis. So I want to walk you through that. So average used car price in Canada at the end of March was $27,140, which is 3% higher than where we were last year. So the other thing important thing is the trend, right? Like usually what we see is that used car prices start on the high side and then decline throughout the year. But that doesn't seem to be the case this year, right? If you look at the graph on the top, it's pretty stable. And when I looked at the data on Friday, the April 16th, to get a sense of what's happening in April, it actually went up even further. So again, by last Friday, the difference, the year-over-year difference in used car prices is around 5.2%. So interesting stuff. But removing the COVID from the equation, when we look at used vehicle sales as a percentage of total sales, the used vehicles are taking more and more market share in the last while. So in 2007, we were at around 59%, and it's been going up, and last year we were at 65%. So based on the lack of inventory, the lack of the new inventory in the market, we believe that this phenomena, this trend will keep going. The next slide, what I want to do is obviously we look at the data from different perspectives. One of them is the provincial data. And when we looked at the data by province, the Alberta, BC, Ontario, and Quebec, the prices are up all throughout the country, so there are no surprises. One exception was the prices in Prince Edward Island. There's a slight decline in the prices in Prince Edward Island, but compared to the whole pie, it's relatively a small piece in the equation. And one other thing that's very interesting is when we looked at the data at the segment level, the light truck prices have been skyrocketing for quite a while, going back to August 2020. So as of, again, end of March 2021, last month, the average light truck price was up by 15.4%. Again, we know that from industry reports that the microchip shortages, the productions, the closures and whatnot, they seem to be impacting the light trucks more than the other segments. So we don't think that this trend, until these issues have been resolved, we don't think that this trend will revert back. So high level, just let me give you a quick recap. We talked about the vaccination and its importance. The economy seems to be responding pretty positively. Looking at Asia, looking at what happened in the previous financial downturns, the GDP has been improving, and it's expected to go back to its previous levels and above by the end of 2021. And Canadians saved a lot of money. Again, I still cannot believe how much money they're idle money sitting in these accounts, $100 billion. So we believe that substantial amount of these savings, $100 billion, will be spent on vehicles. And lastly, just talked about the used cars, lack of inventory, the increase in demand, the demand and supply mismatch, as we call it, will keep having a big impact on used car prices. And within the used cars sphere, light trucks is the one to watch. So that wraps my presentation. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.
Baris, thank you so much. Some really great information in there. As I mentioned, a combination of looking externally at the broader kind of macroeconomic trends and consumer behavior, and then combining it with what we see on the marketplace and tying that story together. Fantastic. And reasons for us all to be a little bit optimistic, I think, thinking about all those dollars that are being saved and are kind of being stored in savings accounts and whatnot. And really encouraging to hear the number of consumers who report that they're going to put that to use in buying a new, more expensive car, replacing their existing car. So thank you very much, Baris. Any questions for Baris on that content? As I mentioned at the outset, please use the Q&A button on the right-hand side of the screen. Pop that in there now while it's fresh in your mind, and we'll get to it in the Q&A session at the very end. Thank you, Baris. Okay, so next up we have Bryan Segal from Comscore. So as I mentioned earlier, Comscore, the big player in the kind of third-party internet measurement space, measure all kinds of interesting things. Bryan's going to take us through the Comscore methodology, how they do it, but then also some really relevant and interesting trends to us in the automotive space. Don't believe Bryan's a relation to 90s action star Steven Seagal, but I think his presentation is going to be just as impactful. So Bryan, if you are there, please do unmute and take it away.
Awesome, thank you very much. I'm not related to Steven Seagal, unfortunately, but I will attempt to bring you through some ninja moves as it pertains to data today, rather than actual trying to disguise some of my moves. So my name is Bryan Segal. I'm the Senior Vice President of Comscore. Been at Comscore for just over 20 years now. And I know I look probably 22, 23, but a little older. And obviously the pandemic got me a little bit older than I actually look. But I'm very excited to be chatting today. I want to thank Ian and the team for inviting us. Our job today will to try to help you take some of the data that you see in the marketplace and translate that into business narratives and commercial narratives that can help give a third-party view on what's going on. Again, I think it's really important for you to get a quick understanding of who Comscore is, how we do what we do, and then from there we will walk you through some automotive marketplace information. So let's take it from there. Just a quick thing, Comscore, and there won't be any nice cheery market slides about how great Comscore is. Just give you an overall fact view here. Comscore is a third-party audience measurement company. We have over 3,200 clients around the world, headquartered in Reston, Virginia. And our job is to establish a global recognized brand for measuring digital marketplace. And we focus a lot, especially in Canada, on the digital marketplace. But above and beyond that, around the globe, we have other measurements as it pertains to linear or box office. And our job is to really kind of be a third party and measure what, in this case, Canadians are doing online on a month-to-month basis. We spend a lot of time and energy in terms of making sure that our data is both trusted and independent. And we spend a lot of time and resources and money on data quality to ensure that our data is verified and accredited with organizations around the globe, with companies like the MRC or the Media Ratings Council, UCOM, ABC, and many other players around the globe to ensure that our data is best of breed and our methodology is trusted, tried, and true. So just to give you all a little bit of an understanding about how we do what we do, Comscore has two methods of measurement. On one side of the equation, we have panels. In Canada, we have a panel of 45,000 people, and around the globe, our panel is over 2 million people, where people basically download a little piece of software that downloads onto their computer or mobile device and allows us to see everything that they do click by click, second by second. Now, we take all the PII or the personal identifiable information out of that, but that allows us to see exactly what people do and attach that to a person or a demographic. So that's on the panel side. The panel measurement is really important as you sell autos and cars to people, you advertise to people, and so we really need to measure people, not machines. And that's why the panel is so important. In addition to that, if you haven't heard, you will hear about this cookie evaporation or cookie deletion, cookie evaporation, somebody stealing cookies from the cookie jar. All of these things that pertains to cookies are something that's really important, yet again, to have panels, because panels measure people and don't have any sort of cookie outlay. So we have, as the core of our measurement is our panel. On the other side of our equation, we have a census network. So we work with almost 38 million websites around the globe who basically put a little tag on their website, and we measure what they do click by click, second by second. And this is really very much a census level measurement and allows us to measure what people do on a census side. So it helps us measure hits, clicks, page views, app starts. And then what we do in this measurement tool was started here in Canada and then now adopted globally is it's called the Unified Digital Measurement Approach, where we take our panel level measurement and align that with our census level measurement to bring them together to measure both people level measurement and machine level measurement and bring them together, which is the core of what we do on our media metrics measurement tools, which is our Census Unified Digital Measurement Approach. And that's how we measure what we do on a month-by-month basis here at Comscore. And that method is MRC accredited, and we spent a lot of time working with clients around the globe. And when you see any of the data today, that's where that data comes from, is our ongoing measurement approach in the marketplace and what we do click by click, second by second. So today, just so everyone's clear, the measurement that we have is part of our ongoing measurement. This is not a study that was done by Trader or for Trader. This data just comes from our syndicated data measurement systems, of which all of our clients have access to. And we just took some of that data and we took some of the cuts of it to show all of you what's going on in the marketplace today. And some of it works very nicely for Trader and shows how great they're doing, and some of it shows how great some of their competitors are doing. Our job is to really measure a transparent third-party measurement, and we're going to show you some of the outcomes of it today. So at current, we have about 32 million Canadians are using the internet. And when we talk about that, we talk about that from sort of a couple different platforms. First is desktop. Many of you still use a desktop, and we're going to talk about the importance of that. The second is smartphones, both app and browsers, tablets, both app and browsers, and video. So currently, as I mentioned, there's over 32 million Canadians who use the internet on a monthly basis. As you see, 32.5 million Canadians, 28.1 million Canadians 2+ use the internet from their desktop, and 24.9 million Canadians use their mobile devices, whether it be through smartphones or tablets. And that's the latest and greatest in terms of what we measure. Now, I think it's important to understand as we look at platforms, you could see that there's a continual evolution of unique visitors and how they're going. If we look at 2018 to 2019 to 2020 and beyond, what you're seeing is that overall, there's still a proportion of the audience, almost 7 million Canadians, who still use desktop onlys. Can you believe it? It's true. You see about 7 million Canadians who use desktop only and do not use a mobile device or use mobile and desktop. There's over 20 million Canadians, and that's in orange, who use what we call multi-platform. That's both desktop and mobile. And now in Canada, there's over 4.5 million Canadians who are using mobile only, who are basically using the internet on a mobile only basis. Now, you can understand that there's all this hype that comes along with this mobile only universe, as we've seen a 42% growth year over year. But as I mentioned, there still is a huge proportion of the population who's using desktop only, and we shouldn't forget about that population when we think about Canadians and users and people who buy cars and people who visit websites, because mobile is a very important population, but desktop only is still a really important population to look at. When you look at time spent, it's really important to really kind of understand the impact of time spent. Almost 73% of all time spent by Canadians is spent on mobile devices. That's right, 73% of all time spent on the internet in Canada is spent on mobile devices. But one of the important things to think about, especially as it pertains during COVID, is that all platforms saw an increase of time spent during COVID. Even on tablet devices, we saw, even though every year we saw this annual decline, we actually during 2020, we saw an increase in time spent on tablets, a big increase of time spent on mobile devices, obviously, and as well, we saw a slight decrease in terms of time spent on desktop. And most of that came from long-form video, but over time, we're seeing a decline. What we saw a decline, which is now seeing increases everywhere. The pandemic has caused us to see a share of time spent increase across every single platform. But one of the things that I think is really important for us to realize is, as though we've seen all of these increases over time, during the COVID time, we've seen the largest impact being on mobile. When you think about desktop usage, what I want to mention is that though it continues to see decreases over time, except for last year due to COVID, Canada still leads the world with 26.1% of all of its time spent being spent on desktop computers. So don't forget about desktop users, don't forget about their impact. And as you will see over time, that desktop users, especially in Canada, are something that's really important to look at. As it pertains to usage, in April 2020, as no one will be surprised on this call, we have seen the largest Canadian growth in terms of highest time spent by Canadians on record. And obviously the COVID impact has seen huge impact. And we've also seen huge repercussions as that impact of time spent on digital has continued to be very apparent. And what we've seen is that the COVID effect has had this long-term effect that we haven't seen a decline. 78% of the Canadian digital audience access the internet via mobile devices. Right now, 25 million Canadians reach online via smartphones and tablets. We've seen a 24.3%, 24.3 million Canadians who use a smartphone, which is year over year 4% growth. And 10.9 million Canadians are using their tablet devices, which are 4.4% year over year decline. So really we're seeing this huge advent of users on mobile devices. Currently, over 4.6 million Canadians are using mobile devices only, with 11% year over year growth in that mobile only universe. Again, we've seen an 18% year over year growth in smartphone only. Now 14.1 million Canadians are using their smartphones exclusively without using a tablet. And there's almost 600,000 Canadians who are using a tablet only, which is a 38% year over year decline. So obviously there's a changing landscape that we're seeing as it pertains to platforms. And we're going to continue to see that evolve as we've seen the COVID impact and beyond. As you can see here, I mentioned before, 73% of Canadians are now using all of their time spent against mobile devices. So that means 27% is being used either through desktop or on tablets. But now the greatest proportion, why all this hype on mobile devices, is because 73% of all time spent on digital is spent on mobile devices. And that's something that we should continue to keep our eye on, and why all this hype is happening on mobile devices. So what's happening in the digital automotive content? What we're seeing in Canada is that 18.2 million Canadians can be found on automotive content on any given month. 7.5 million Canadians could be reached on automotive content on their desktop devices, persons 2+, and 13.5 million Canadians can be found 18+ on looking at automotive content. So obviously when you take the 7.5 million plus 13.5 million, that's 21 million, but there's a lot of duplication of people who look for automotive content both on their desktop devices and their mobile devices. So a really large audience. When you think about this as on a global basis, you can see that Canada has the second largest growth in digital reach for automotive content. 56% of Canadians online are looking for automotive content. 41% are looking for automotive resources websites, places like Trader or Kijiji or Car Gurus, and 20% reach of manufacturer websites like Ford or Toyota. And so we can see that Canadians have a really high penetration in terms of automotive content, and we're very, very active as it pertains to visiting and spending time on automotive websites. Only second to Spain in terms of total automotive reach, but much higher than the United Kingdom and higher than the United States of America. Again, if you break that down just versus the US versus the UK, you could see that Canada leads against these countries, both in terms of automotive reach on their desktop devices and automotive reach on their mobile devices. Again, just showing that Canada has a very high reach of automotive visitation. What we can see in addition is during COVID pandemic, with it in full swing, we obviously saw a drop in April 2020, but Canada has rebounded significantly as it pertains to visitation there in the blue bars, with visitation now higher year over year across all of these automotive segments, whether it be manufacturers or against automotive resources sites. We're seeing both a rebound in both of those areas in Canada across both these sectors. What we have seen is that resource websites like Trader or Kijiji Autos or Car Gurus or Hearst Autos have had a greater, faster rebound than OEM sites such as Ford and Kia or Toyota. And in blue, we see in the total automotive category, the manufacturers are in orange, and the resource websites we see have very much mirrored the total automotive rebound. Again, this automotive rebound has happened quicker in resource websites versus that of manufacturer websites. Again, COVID has changed, and Baris talked a lot about some of these trends, but I think it's really important to understand that though perspective has changed, the change does not mean stop of visitation. The usage is still very high, and I think what we'll continue to see is that actions and people want to purchase stuff. And though what we've seen is that over here during some of our studies, what we found is that the COVID has changed the way that the economy or the pandemic impact of shopping. People have changed their habits, and that doesn't mean that they're shopping less or that they're not visiting as much. It just could mean that they're visiting more or they're changing their habits. And we've seen that a lot during the COVID, and we'll continue to look at that. One of the things that we've definitely seen over time is that there's been overall a change in the way that Canadians are accessing mobile content. And we've seen that there's been a huge increase in terms of the way that people have switched their mobile content to be automotive friendly on mobile devices. We could see that there's been a small decrease in terms of the automotive visitation on desktop only, a small decrease in the amount of content, share of content being looked at on desktop. And obviously we've seen a 20% increase year over year in terms of automotive visitation on mobile devices. And this continued to happen. And now we can see around 60% of users now accessing mobile content for automotive solely on mobile devices. One of the interesting things, if we look at all Canadians versus the automotive category, is that Canadians are about 4% more likely to access automotive content exclusively on mobile devices. Almost 60% of automotive content is being looked at mobile only. And what you can still see is that 26% are still higher proportion of automotive content is being looked at on desktop only. So we don't want to forget about our desktop only users. We definitely don't want to forget about our smartphone only users. And we do want to keep an eye on that automotive user who's using and accessing both off of desktop and mobile devices. When we start to think about the demographic of these users, as I mentioned, there's over 17 million persons 18 plus who are accessing automotive content in Canada. They're very highly focused in that 35 to 64 range, have a high household income with over 75,000 plus household income. And obviously you could see the type of occupations that they have. When you look at the spread throughout the country, you can see the highest penetration of digital automotive, total automotive users is there in Newfoundland, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, and followed by Ontario and PEI. And again, you could see the highest information resource users in Newfoundland and British Columbia and Saskatchewan, but you could see that the highest manufacturer users are in British Columbia. So again, throughout the country, they're very highly penetrated across automotive websites, but we're seeing the highest in Newfoundland, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Ontario. Again, when we start to think about the snapshot of the automotive information resource user, we're seeing that over 41% of users are reaching automotive information resource users. 13.3 million Canadians on a monthly basis are looking at automotive information resource websites, spending over 241 million minutes. The number one automotive information resource website or information group is the autoTRADER.ca group. Again, this is a third-party view. 14.2% of Canadians visited an automotive resource website within Trader, spending an average of 15.9 million. That equates to over 4.6 million Canadians on a monthly basis, followed by Kijiji Autos, about 10% reach of Canadians online for about 20.4 minutes on a monthly basis, and that's about 3.2 million Canadians, followed by Auto Guide, Driving.ca, and internet brands Automotive. So again, this is just a third-party point of view on what's going on in this category. As mentioned, what we're seeing is the number one destination on the desktop site, which is obviously not as popular as Kijiji, about 1.4 million Canadians, followed by Trader, which is 1.3 million Canadians. So about 80,000 more Canadians are going to Kijiji Autos on their desktop devices. Now the story is very different when looking at AutoTrader. They're number one on the mobile devices. About 3.6 million Canadians are going to AutoTrader on their mobile devices, followed second by Kijiji, which is 2.1 million. So about 1.5 million more Canadians going to Trader more on their mobile devices than Kijiji. Again, if you think about that on a province by province perspective, you could see that in terms of Ontario, you could see that about 1.6 times the amount of Canadians going to Trader over Kijiji. In Quebec, about 1.4 times the amount of visitors on Trader than Kijiji, and 2 times the amount in British Columbia on AutoTrader than Kijiji. Again, almost 500,000 visitors going to Trader versus that of Kijiji. In the prairies, almost a little over 5% more for AutoTrader than Kijiji, is about 762,000 Canadians versus 721,000. And then in Atlantic Canada, you're seeing just a little higher usage of Trader versus Kijiji, again, about 5% usage. So again, across the country, it's really important to look at how it looks. When you think about the that in a resources perspective, you can see again, most of the users are coming from that 35 to 65 age group. Again, a very high percentage in that 75,000 plus income. And that's kind of consistent than what we're seeing. Again, when you start to think about the different household composition, it's very similar as you look at the different players, Auto Guide, Driving.ca, Kijiji, or Trader. But what we do find is that 63% of the 4.6 million Canadians that go to AutoTrader is 2.9 million Canadians, 75,000 plus household income, versus the 62% of the 3.2 million Canadians who go to Kijiji, which is around 2 million Canadians. So there's about 900,000, 75,000 plus income visitors more going to AutoTrader than there is to Kijiji. Again, important to look as we continue to look at the actual resources manufacturer websites. You can see the number one player in Canada is Ford, about 3.8% reach of Canadians, followed by General Motors, Toyota, Hyundai, Kia, and then Fiat, Chrysler. So we do rankings across these different players. Again, all of these websites together are reaching about 6.7 million Canadians on a monthly basis. The average Canadian is spending about 27 minutes on these OEM websites, and what we're seeing about a total aggregate of about 179 million minutes. Again, the age skew is about the same as we see across the other websites, and we're seeing obviously a highly focused on persons with 75,000 plus income. We're going to spend the last 5 minutes here on the impact of COVID-19 on auto intenders. So really kind of just focusing here on auto intenders. And what we could see, because of the pandemic, 4 in 10 automotive intenders see the top issue of the economic concern being the pandemic. I guess that's no surprise to anybody. 3 in 10 intenders were actually extremely or very concerned that the pandemic would impact their ability to purchase a new vehicle or make payments. And almost half the intenders reported that their income was negatively impacted by the pandemic. Now, that might seem like negative news, but as we continue to look at some of the data, as you could see, it's not all negative. When you're looking at the pandemic impact on auto intenders, the things that people reported as the most important thing during the pandemic was finding a good deal, currently more careful with their spending, expected to research more on vehicles. So automotive resources site and automotive content was more important to Canadians and Americans more than ever during the pandemic. And what we see is that some of that, the income uncertainty has delayed a little bit the purchase of a vehicle, and they plan to buy new instead of used during the pandemic. The pandemic impact on auto intenders was not all negative, and the silver lining was definitely there. One of the things that we saw, a third of intenders expected the pandemic economic situation would make their research timeline a little longer, but the delay was due to waiting for better deals. We saw case levels being important, and they did not feel it was safe to test drive during COVID. What the important part is that I think if you look at the bottom part of the chart, I think this is one of the most important impacts of the study that we found, is that 55% of intenders reported they expected that there was no timeline change. It's 27% of intenders reported that the pandemic had no change on their plans to purchase, and actually 13% of intenders expected their research timeline to be shorter because the new deals that were coming into market, the changes in COVID levels and cases, which saw an opportunity for buying, and they feeling less safe in more public modes, so they needed to buy a car in a quicker method. And so that was definitely, it's important to see how you look at the data, and that data can actually show some of these important impacts. Nearly 7 in 10 intenders considered the size of this discount important, and just over half of intenders considered the availability of COVID assistance to be very, very important. We definitely saw that over half of the intenders were interested in shopping and utilizing online tools more than ever. And this is a 10% increase year over what we've seen across our studies over years. Now, before we saw the impact of the intenders versus visitation, and we saw a huge growth amongst males. But when you look solely visitors versus intenders, it's really important to see a big difference in visitation versus intenders. On the visitation side, what we saw is about 30% of visitors were female versus 63% of intenders are female. And when you look at the household income, you could see before that almost 60% of income of visitors was 75,000 plus. What you can see is that household income of intenders is 44% of it is 50,000 plus and below, which means 56% was household income above. We see that intender skews a little bit younger, and obviously a lot of intenders already have a vehicle, and it's important to understand that. Things that were important to users during COVID was gas and mileage, the brand, dealership experience, safety, online and social information, and these all had an impact on users during the COVID. And then lastly, last slide of the day, is it's really important to understand the persona of new versus used car shoppers. I think as you start to understand these users, it's really going to be important to understand how you market or how you attach to them. And one of the things that we looked at when we think about new car users is that we could see that 21% were not born in Canada, 28% more likely to find that type of user. 39% have utilized a financial planner, so 35% more likely. 23% are fitness club vendors, 27% more likely. And 10% expect to get a new pet in the new year. So as you start to think about the story or what this person looks like, it's really important to understand what are some of the other personas. For used car shoppers, what we see is that 49% have donated in the past year, so 10% more likely. 18% have children enrolled in sports, so 39% more likely. And 26% expect to change jobs in the next year, which is 96% more likely than the average Canadian. So all this said, it's really important to understand the users and who they are, obviously the trends, what platform they're using, and obviously the changing Canadian usage over the time and how that changes over time to really kind of target your users and target what websites you want to work with to best understand the automotive users and how they're searching for automotive information in Canada on a month-to-month basis. So I want to thank you very much, and I'll be around during the question and answer period to answer any of the data questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was awesome. So much information. Really, really useful, and it just a flavor of the kind of insights that the Comscore have from their panels and the census and whatnot. And I have to say that my heart was in my mouth a little bit when Brian was speaking, because we didn't kind of vet anything Brian was going to say. There's no kind of script. I said to Brian, we're a transparent kind of organization here at Trader. We're not afraid of the data. So you'll see Brian was talking about competitors of AutoTrader and things like that in the presentation. And obviously we do see those numbers. And it's encouraging to see that AutoTrader is the biggest marketplace in terms of visitation. It's right there. You had it from Comscore. I know that sometimes out in the market, there's different claims being made about Comscore, and people like to reference it because it is sort of such a trusted brand for measurement. But now I think we've all seen from Brian Segal, Vice President Commercial at Comscore, we can challenge those kind of assertions and say, well, I saw some data from Comscore themselves that shows something different, perhaps. But look, the other thing is, I think that it's not just about quantity. It is nice to be the biggest marketplace for sure, and to be such a huge resource. Reach is important, but also, really, what gets us out of bed in the morning at Trader Corporation is how many cars we help dealer partners sell. And so, again, reach is important, but we want to work with dealer partners in a transparent way and help both of us to kind of understand how many cars we're helping dealers to sell, and the contributions that we're making, and how the marketplace is working for them. So nice to be the biggest, but it's also about kind of lead quality, attribution, actual cars sold, and things like that, which is also a methodology that we embrace. And the other thing that stood out to me there was just about, for auto intenders specifically, that growth year over year in terms of the mobile only or the multi-platform and mobile consumption, where those auto intenders are going. I think it was plus 20% on mobile year over year. That's also some of the insights that drive some of our product development, the things that we're trying to do. For those of you that are aware of our sort of latest product, which is Priority Listings Max, it's a cross-functional product. These are the kind of insights that drive the product decisions that we make, and then that we bring to our dealer partners for consideration. So if you're interested in taking advantage of that wave, PL Max is a good product. Do speak to your trader rep about that. Okay, so thank you very much, Brian. Awesome stuff. So now we have a poll, one of the short polls that I mentioned. So do participate in this, please, and you have the chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. So we're going to ask a simple question, and the poll should be open in just a few seconds. Again, the poll button will be on the right-hand side of your screen. If you can't see it, exit full screen mode, and you should be able to see it. This is the question. I'll give you a couple of seconds to answer. So of those 45% of Canadians who have been saving money throughout the pandemic, and they plan to purchase a vehicle in the next 6 months, what percentage are going to tap into those savings to fund the purchase? That's the thing that was driving the increase in the value of the car that they're looking to buy and whatnot, because they have all these savings ready to go. So what percentage was that? I'll give you a couple of seconds, and then we will reveal the answer. What is the answer? %64%, almost 2/3. So a lot of those savings, as we heard, are going to go towards cars. good news for us in the automotive game. Okay, so thanks for participating in that. And if you got the question right, you will go into a draw and you may win that Amazon gift voucher, and we'll notify winners a few days after the event. Okay, so next up, I think we come to our third speaker of the afternoon, Cathie Pattinson. So, we've been looking at some macro trends. We've been looking at some stuff, what's going on out there, with the economy, with the market, but users, what are they doing? How is their behavior differing and whatnot? Now we're going to bring it a little closer to home, and we're going to take a look at something a bit more operational, a bit more relatable, for those of us that are working in the dealership environment. Hearing from, one of our very own, Cathie Pattinson, dealer principal. So obviously Cathie is very experienced in the challenges that have been specific to dealers over the past kind of year. And Cathie's been good enough to kind of put together some of her learnings and thoughts and what she's been able to take away from the previous year, package it all up nicely for us. And hopefully we're all going to learn quite a bit about operationally, how can we improve, evolve, keep winning as we continue through this pandemic. So with that said, I'll ask Cathie to unmute and welcome Cathie Pattinson. I'm really delighted to have you with us.
Thank you. Okay, so for all of our dealer friends that have been tuned in here for the last couple of presentations, there's been lots of fantastic data shared, lots of statistics, and you will not have to write down any more for the next 20 or 25 minutes. My presentation, if any of you have heard me speak before, I tend to focus on my experience in the industry, speaking as a professional to other professionals. If you don't know me, my name is Cathie Pattinson, and I have worked in automotive retail for the past 20 years. Most of that time has been dealership experience spent in my family's business, Auto Park Superstore. Worked alongside my father, growing that into one of the largest used car dealership operations in Ontario. After that, I worked with ADESA at the corporate level, getting auction experience and helping to scale out a revenue strategy to try to help recapture units lost to the remarketing chain via the private sale. And more recently, working as a vendor with IA Sal, helping their dealer partners to become better, more profitable used car dealers. In 2017, my husband and I completely changed course in our careers and opened One Price Used Car Superstore together. So at the start of March 2020, with our young business, we were congratulating ourselves and patting ourselves on the back for coming out of what was our best used car sales volume month ever in the relatively short history of our dealership. Over the weeks that followed, that little soundbite that was the coronavirus seeped into the lives of everybody and swelled up to the point where we wondered, how can we keep our people safe? How can we ask them to come into work if we can't keep them safe from this thing? So on March 20th, 2020, we were the first dealership in our city to voluntarily close a full 2 weeks ahead of the first province-wide lockdown. 7 weeks later, we're allowed to open by appointment. 7 weeks. For normal people, that's 49 days. For car dealership people, when you factor in the hours we work, that's like a year and a half. In that time, we went through the entire range of emotion. We had fear of all the new and unknown things that were suddenly happening around us. We worried about how we would pay for our overhead at the store and how our staff would be able to make their ends meet. I had a lot of anger as a business owner, as a mom, and in general at the stupidity of humans for somehow managing to add this lethal virus to our already long list of nemesis. Despair was a big one, worrying and feeling sadness for all the things that we were losing in all the aspects of our lives. In true dealer form, denial that this thing was going to last longer than another couple of weeks. And then finally, acceptance, acknowledging that, yes, this had happened, it would last longer, and that it was in almost every way possible changing our world forever. Now, I'm not alone in saying that the effects of COVID haven't all been bad for the business. Did we lose money? off the start, hell yeah. That first 45 to 60 days was terrifying. We lost tons of money. But I took the time and really dug into and sat with that fear. I did that because for 49 days, we had nothing else to do. We had no cars to deal with, no customers to distract ourselves with. And at that point, you kind of go through this weird process where you realize that the only way forward is just doing something. And there is no map because all the rules have changed. And we just knew that it wasn't going to be more of the same things that we built our business on. So I used that fear as a catalyst. And to get away from it, I wrote and I planned and analyzed the business. And we asked ourselves a lot of questions and began to feel that failure wasn't in taking the risks, but failure was pretty much certain if we tried to continue to cling to a model. It just wasn't going to work anymore. Putting it in pictures, it's kind of heavy-handed here, but we literally just went through an ice age, and we as car dealers have to kind of stop acting like dinosaurs. They were this magnificent dominant species that died out instantly when their world changed. And what survived were these more compact and agile species like the horseshoe crab that has actually been the longest surviving species on Earth, being around for 480 million years. We questioned everything, breaking our business down into 4 categories. We looked at processes, operations, expenses, and rev streams. And in each of those categories, we mapped and sketched out every piece and every person. Literally nothing was taken for granted. Not one action, not one policy got a pass without facing evaluation. Spent looking at the fundamentals, processes. What did our dealership do specifically? What could we do differently, do less of, do more of, start doing to alter the financial impact of the day-to-day applications in our business and streamline every job? Operations, what outside services and platforms did we rely on? Was there too much complexity in those systems? Too many steps? Too many blocks in the org chart? Did these things add little or no value to the things our dealership actually had to do? Costs and expenses. What did we spend money on? Did the value proposition make sense? Was there a consistent and positive return on investment in capital? Did the spend translate into increased revenue or some other kind of efficiency? Finally, rev streams. How do we make money? Being a used car dealer without any service or parts or new car sales, what pathways did we have to use our resources to generate profit? Even if they're short-term strategies, what can we do to increase streams of business to buffer the impact of this pandemic? This was not a comfortable and easy process. Ask anyone who's in a business partnership, and they will tell you that they and their partner have different strengths and points of view. Now, ask anyone who's in a business partnership with their spouse, and they will buy you a vodka. One of the factors that allowed our business to grow and develop over the last 4 years is that my husband and I have opposing strengths, and we generally handle different aspects of our business on a mutual trust basis. This process was the very opposite of that organic growth. And it included some friction as we had to question ourselves and each other, along with all the categories I just outlined. But the idea of thriving out of this madness motivated us both, and the desire to drop inefficiencies and use the disruption in our world to draw new lines in our business and color outside the lines was just too tempting for us to give up on in the name of saving our egos. I won't bore you with everything that we looked at and changed. I'll give you a few examples. Again, our business is different than most of yours. We are a standalone used car dealership. We are not part of a dealer group, and we're still a young and growing business with only 4 years in existence. The processes, we narrowed it down to the basics. We buy cars, we advertise them, we sell them, we provide financing and protection products for our customers. The one thing that we could change the most right away was the way we buy inventory. So before, my husband would go to the auction a few times a week, buy as many cars as we wanted or needed, and that's how we got 90% of our inventory. With physical auctions closing, we had to move our buying online, which meant we had to spend hours doing research, reading CRs, looking at pictures, and viatoing everything. Couldn't touch the cars till after we bought them, so the pre-work became even more important to protect us from bad cars and bad consigners. But now suddenly everyone's buying online, and we'd spend 25 hours a week focusing on just researching cars and logging into auctions. And then we'd end up with less cars than we wanted, or having to settle for less desirable cars because we didn't want to pay the sky-high prices that some dealers were paying for the best units. And we started to look at digital platforms and very quickly realized that that was how we could access different inventory from different consigners, pay less fees, which was huge, and end up with what was often a better unit that we could pick up faster and have online the same day we bought it. It sounds basic now, but this was probably the biggest change we made overall, and the one that required the most personal growth from both Jason and I. He's the auction guy, I'm the computer girl. Suddenly, we needed each other, and our business had to adapt quickly to make our sourcing strategy work in this new world without in-lane buying. It was hard. It was very humbling, and I resented buying from platforms I'd had bad experiences with in the past, but beyond all that, when we got down to it, it was faster, better, cheaper, and made stocking something that fit in around all of our sales activities rather than dominating set times on certain days. This single change has let us become a sales-focused organization rather than an inventory acquisition-focused organization, which makes sense since we are a retail business. Operations, the structure of the processes of what we do, is a really interesting aspect of a dealership to analyze. So for us, it includes outside services, vendors, job roles, and the org chart of our company. In this category, people and job roles was where we made the most drastic changes. We went into the first lockdown with 6 sales reps, 2 business managers, 2 accounting people, 2 mechanics, 2 lot people, a detailer, and Jason and I. We sat with our list of processes and we took the names off the jobs, figured out how many people we needed, and if we were going to sell less cars, what skill sets could mix together and what functions supported each other. And then we had to make some really hard decisions. When I worked with IA Sal, it was my job to go into dealerships and analyze the operations. And in that period, I had to regularly remind dealers to remember that no matter how important you feel your key people are, and no matter what their personal story is, your dealership always has to be the most important person in the room, because the whole team only benefits when the dealership wins in the long term. And anyone who works against that premise is detrimental to your company and to all the other individuals in it. We had some clear detractors, jobs that were redundant or mostly able to be absorbed with efficiencies into other roles. Team members who just didn't respect us or the business we were building, and people who weren't going to be willing to change or able to see the need for us to do more with less. Still, we recalled every single person to work, and without exception, every person who we knew that we didn't need didn't come back. We lost a few of the good ones, but the shuffle of COVID gave us all an opportunity to take a step back and enough latitude to make a leap without making a mess of the business or damaging that relationship with an outbound employee. For those who came back, it was, and it still has been, truly an all hands on deck approach. Some people have extra duties assigned to them now. Some people are still working on reduced hours. And every single person in our organization shares our focus on balancing the needs of the dealership, first and foremost, and caring for the One Price family to the greatest extent that we can under that overarching aim. Now, I might be the only dealer who will sit here and tell you from the bottom of my heart, we have an outstanding staff. We are exceptionally blessed. We have people who love our company as much as we do. People who take pride in their work, who support each other and us as the owners, and to whom it is a pleasure for us to work with. In the past 12 months, in about 9 of those months, we've sold an average of 80 to 90% of the cars we did before COVID. But now we have 2 salespeople, 2 selling FSMs, 2 mechanics, 1 accounting and admin person, 1 lot person, 1 detailer, and 2 owner operators. Expenses are always every dealer's favorite gripe. This time, the reality was simply that we couldn't afford to operate the way we had to before. We had to spend less on fixed costs and tighten every transactional expense that we could so that we kept more money in every deal. We reduced our rent factor by using industry survey data and, to be quite frank, swallowing our pride and optimism and taking these facts to our commercial landlord, who understood the pessimistic sentiment that I presented from the OMVIC and UCDA dealer surveys. We right-sized our payroll with reducing the staff and working hours. We cut inventory carrying costs by stocking a tighter supply of cars. We lowered our buy fees by using platforms that cut our old fees by about a third. I spent hours in Excel hell, and I am not a data person. I mean, I am a data person, but I'm not. Looking at what cars sold the fastest for us with the best front and back end profits and the least recon costs, and allowed us to focus on less car categories that performed less well for our store. You know, before we looked at our parents' businesses and the other large used car superstores, and we thought we had to be, you know, like a car vending machine and stock every category. And the reality is that just is a very inefficient model for a mid-sized dealership. So we focused on what worked best for us and got rid of all of the extra, less profitable parts of our business. We applied for the government loans and subsidies, every single one we could qualify for as quickly as possible to level out our cash flow. I can honestly tell you, I've done almost every job in a dealership, but I learned in the past year what it would have taken me 10 years to understand about our business and controlling the statement and the costs of operating if it weren't for COVID. I used to count expenses only as fixed or variable, but now we have a whole new delineation of necessary for survival, nice to have, and just not worth the money. We've become pretty adept at reducing our expenses. When a new set of challenges comes up, we get thrown a game changer like current lockdown, where we had just a half a day's notice. The last piece of the puzzle we looked at was the breadwinner, literally. Generating revenue is job number 1 for a retail business, and we quickly figured out that being limited to just 2 rev streams, retailing used cars and looking for profit in the front and the back, left us too vulnerable and limits our opportunity. We needed more profit potential without adding expense or strain to our business, and that meant most add-on departments weren't going to fit that bill. Customer pay service requires significant investment in staff, software, and infrastructure. Parts doesn't make sense for an all-makes used car dealership. Going back to basics, Jason and I figured out that we could leverage his years in the wholesale space by turning our trade-ins into profitable wholesale units and offering selected units for sale on wholesale platforms while simultaneously offering them for retail sale. We also decided to move back into a space where I had worked extensively with my father and began purchasing units for exporting to the United States. Suddenly, we're a 4 rev stream business with a wider, more stable footprint that allows us to cover off a baseline revenue each month, regardless of the lockdowns or retail restrictions in place. With the original profit centers, we focused on incremental growth and efficiencies, or how to make more money selling less cars. We used our data to find the best performers and sought them out. We noticed that our customers changed in this new era. For example, South Asian students and new PRs have always been a huge part of our business, but with COVID, hundreds of thousands of international students stopped coming. And one article that I found stated that Indian people in Canada were facing double the unemployment rate of the national average. And this is clearly reflected in who we see coming in the door to buy cars, which has also been added to by the regional effect of local lockdowns and local people no longer wanting to travel to higher risk regions to shop. More people in Halton region are now giving us a chance instead of shopping in Peel or Toronto dealerships. I'm not going to lie and tell you that this has all been so easy or even a little bit fun, or that we can go on like this forever. But these are the kinds of things we've done to get this far. I will share that we have been profitable in 6 of the last 9 months. It is tough for us as dealers to just be hanging on. We're in this business because we love it. Most of us are adrenaline junkies, and car people are some of the hardest working and most innovative people. To have this massive uncertainty all around us and no clear way forward is impossibly hard. We are trained to chase growth. Every slide is year over year and month over month data. We focus on bigger numbers, and that's how we measure success. But I am not planning a bigger year than last year or a bigger year than before COVID. If there's one thing that I'm hoping that you will all take away from this talk, which is just my personal story, remember that we all have the tools in our own businesses. Whatever your business looks like, you can transition and adapt, regardless of the government programs, whatever grants we don't get, regardless of third or fourth or 18th waves, regardless of supply issues, price compression, banks not approving deals, factories not having cars to fill orders. We are car people. We are the toughest, the grittiest. We are willing to work harder. We work longer hours than anyone else. We are always thinking, always trying, always looking for a better way. The changes we make today may seem scary as hell, but nothing is scarier than letting fear paralyze us and trap us in doing the same things over and over. I've learned that it's okay to say, I don't know what's coming. It's okay to say our store may contract to get through this pandemic. This really is a landmark time in all our lives on every level, and our dealerships will not look the same on the other side. But when I look back on this stage in my career, I want to be able to say that I took the attitude of fear nothing other than not making it through this. And you, if you do the same, can find all kinds of ways to change. I want to say thanks to the Trader Carology team for having me here to tell our story. And I hope that you as dealer partners and innovators in the industry got a little something out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathie. I'm sure they did. What an inspirational message that you have there for all of the audience and all of us in the automotive world. And a very familiar story, I'm sure, for many people listening in over some of those difficult decisions, especially around people and resources and things like that over the past year. But very well said. Car people, especially dealers, are a very resilient and innovative group. So keep on. I also like that. I think Cathie kind of invented a new verb there, V-autoing the heck out of everything. So I like that. But for those of you that might not know, it's a very quick plug. V-auto is it's an inventory management system which uses data to help dealers make decisions about acquiring and pricing inventory with a focus on profitability. So if you are interested in V-auto and you're not currently a customer, I know many of you are, go to go.trader.ca, navigate to dealer products, inventory management. You can learn about V-auto. Really an indispensable tool, I would say, at the best of times, but especially when inventory is a little bit tight and you want to be acquiring the right kind of vehicles, pricing them to move and making sure that you're making profit. So thank you very much, Cathie. Awesome presentation. Okay, so next, I believe it's our final speaker, our keynote. Yeah, it's Andrew Tai, CEO of Motoinsight. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know Andrew a little better over the past few months. This is a very, very smart and visionary guy, is Andrew. And he's going to be taking us through the learnings for dealers from online marketplace giants. And I have had a sneak preview of this presentation, some really good stuff, unmissable content. So our last speaker of the day, please, Andrew, if you are unmuted, please take it away.
Awesome. Well, hey, everyone, really great to be with you and in particular, break down some learnings for our dealers, by sharing insights from marketplace giants like Amazon to Carvana and a few others in between. I'm sure we all miss each other and would love to be together in person for this session. But in a way, it's fitting that this is a digital experience, given we're spending so much time talking about digital. Now, there's no doubt there is a lot of change happening in the way customers shop. You probably recognize this in your own behaviors. And today, I'm going to try to go beyond just updating you on what is happening in the market, but break down a few specific examples and what they mean for your business as dealers, how you can thrive selling in this new reality. We'll look at examples from both inside and outside of our industry to catch a glimpse of the future of automotive. So, change is absolutely on our shores in terms of the car buying experience as we know it. Right? On the screen, you see Vantis, which is a subsidiary of Chinese OEM Geely. They're coming to Canada. VinFast, a Vietnamese electronic vehicle OEM, is coming to Canada and hiring. Rivian, the electric truck maker, their vehicle deliveries are starting later this year. And of course, Tesla, they're no longer a fringe actor anymore. The common theme from all of them, though, is that they are all approaching the car buying experience with an entirely new lens. Digital first, e-commerce enabled, transparent pricing, and more, right? This migration to digital and e-commerce really shouldn't be a surprise though, right? If we look at what has already happened in other sectors, it'll give us a peek into the future of automotive. It wasn't that long ago that e-commerce was just a blip in the furniture retailing segment, as an example. In 2000, it was less than 1% of sales there that were e-commerce driven. Today, it's 34%, right? Same thing in appliances, right? Less than 1% in 2000. Today, well north of 30%. And this is data from Boston Consulting Group. And based on their projections, while less than 1% of new car sales today are e-commerce driven, it is expected to be 5 to 7% in 2025, 11 to 17% in less than 10 years, and 20 to 31% in less than 15 years. And it is starting, right? When you look back in time, change always feels like the blink of an eye. And we really believe that we're on the precipice of that change here in automotive. So Carvana, I'm sure you've all heard of them, right? They're worth about $45 billion these days and have far outperformed the stock prices of pretty much every other major publicly traded automotive group, right? To put it in context, Lithia is shy of $10 billion in market cap. And Carvana is worth more than Lithia, AutoNation, Sonic, Asbury, all of them combined. And you could probably throw in a few more. They sold 6,500 cars in 2015. And this year, they're going to be on pace to sell well north of 250,000 cars. In fact, they did 240,000 cars in 2020, with even more momentum coming in 2021. So, they're supposedly out to eat the traditional car dealer's lunch, right? You've probably seen the marketing and the rave customer reviews about the car buying experience. And yes, they have these things called car vending machines, but truth be told, those are really more publicity and marketing than anything else. To put some context into this, Carvana operates in 260 some odd markets, almost 300, but they've got 25 of these machines. At the end of the day, they're in the business of selling cars, just like all you dealers listening today. So what is really different about Carvana that customers rave about them? Investors love them, and they are hailed as the next great disruptor to dealers. The simple answer is that they sell a lot online, right? But okay, what does that really mean? And is there really anything that dealers can't learn and adapt to in order to compete? In fact, this whole concept of selling cars online, and I would put online in quotes, right, isn't really a new one. I dug into the archives of our business at Motoinsight and pulled out this artifact from September 14th, 2011, almost 10 years ago. And even back then, when I was running a auto brokering business in our very early days, right? Customers could find or build the exact car they wanted online on our website, get real final dealer prices, drop a credit card to reserve it online, and then have it delivered to them or picked up at the store, right? That was 10 years ago. Except back then, dealers would email or fax in their prices to us like this, as you see on screen here, right? We would enter those prices into our online portal for customers to compare. But customers have been buying cars from home and dealers have been facilitating it for some time now. It was just less common back then and involved a little bit of email and fax back and forth. And it's finally going mainstream now today. Because if you really peel back the onion, if you will, and go through it, Carvana is still in the business of selling cars. And yes, they do take care of a lot of things really, really well. You got to give it to them. They still merchandise their inventory on SRP pages though, and VDP pages, albeit they do it really well with high-res photos and 360 spins. But I've seen dealers do that too. They have all the tools that enable a customer to do pretty much all the transaction work from home, from trade-in to credit to payments and the like. They don't just capture leads and force customers to wait for a call back. But again, I've seen dealers adapt to that and do that too. In fact, I've seen dealers deliver cars with trucks that are even fancier than Carvana's. This is a clip of a delivery by one of our stores that use our technology to facilitate fully online car sales. And this was years ago. But this isn't even unique to them anymore. And make no mistake about it, humans are absolutely still involved, right? In fact, Carvana has a ton of what they call customer advocates, which to me sound a lot like advanced BDC, to use dealer lingo. In fact, it's not uncommon for a typical Carvana transaction to involve multiple phone calls, chat sessions, and pieces of paper to sign to purchase the car. And yet, every one of those customers would rave that they bought their car online and how innovative the experience was. Recognizing human interaction must still be present. The other technology that enables customers to do work of buying a car from home has really become readily available to dealers. Let's look a little bit closer to home here in terms of in the auto industry from a traditional dealer sense. CarMax is a major US dealer that has adopted a similar approach, and they're publicly traded too, so we can look at their data. And they measure customers that engage with their digital retailing tools online and connect with what they call their customer experience centers. Again, sounds like fancy BDCs, really call center teams that help customers complete their orders online. Today, 60% of their sales do this, right? The way they characterize it is there are three types of customers that they pay attention to now. Customers who want to do the entire transaction online, customers who want to shop on their own terms, both online and in store, and then customers who prefer to shop up close and complete the entire transaction inside of the store. All three are important. And this is what omnichannel means. And they're focused on all three. And as the traditional dealers should as well. Looking at some of their data, 70% of their customers now engage with their customer experience centers or their online buying agents prior to actually making a purchase of the vehicle. 50% progress their sale digitally, which is actually up meaningfully from before COVID, which was at 42%. Right? And progress their sale digitally, meaning they're doing at least one of the processes or major steps online, completing a virtual trade-in appraisal, online credit application, credit card deposit, and the like. Only 30% today are in-store only, right? And 10% now today choose home delivery or curbside pickup, meaning they buy the car without ever stepping foot into the store. A lot of numbers, right? But I think the key takeaway is that all three channels matter and not one can be ignored yet, right? I don't think any of our business can afford to ignore a 10% of our customer base that wants to buy entirely digitally, and that sector is rapidly growing. Even traditional dealers, though, have gotten in on this and are moving with the trends, right? These are just some examples of dealers that we work with. That are marketing their own buy-at-home experiences and tailoring that with a newfound skill set and services around virtual walkarounds or home deliveries. I think virtual walkarounds and home delivery is the new fancy coffee in the dealership, right? A few more examples of dealers that we work with that are making that leap forward. While we enable these dealers with our digital retailing technology, it's important to recognize that technology is just one part of the puzzle, right? With FAF, for example, you can skip the dealership according to them, right? There's no when can you come in, there's no being passed around, there's no I wonder what best price I got. FAF has gone to a one price, one point of contact model, similar to Carvana. They also offer a 3-day, 300-kilometer money-back guarantee and a 30-day, 1,500-kilometer exchange policy, right? Helping to remove the barrier to customers pulling the trigger. New Roads calls it out plainly that they offer a new way to buy a car. Again, with things like virtual trade-in appraisal, with a real value before you step foot into the store, online credit, online reservation deposit, and more. They say that New Roads, that a New Roads car, when it's delivered, you can test own it for up to 7 days or 500 kilometers. And if the feeling isn't quite right, bring it back and they'll exchange it for something more suitable. You see, while the details might vary between dealers and the examples that I showed, the key is how dealers are adapting to what customers are now demanding, right? Now, I'm sure the big question in your mind is probably, okay, that all sounds well and good, but how is it actually performing? And how is it impacting their businesses, right? Do customers actually want to use it, right? And this is where let's take a look at some of our own personal experiences and your experiences as shoppers to really understand the opportunity and the customer dynamic. But to go back to our earlier question around what does Carvana have that dealers can't replicate? The short answer is not very much, really, right? Dealers can compete if there is a willingness to adapt, right? So high quality vehicle merchandising, photos, videos, spins, accurate descriptions, right? Transparent, upfront, competitive pricing, seamless online and in-store capabilities, allowing customers to shop when they want, how they want, being able to stand behind the product with a guarantee, and really being able to shout that out as a differentiated message. These are all the things that Carvana has done exceptionally well and struck a nerve with consumers. But car dealers, traditional car dealers, can do the same as well. So I talked about how we'll spend some time looking at experiences from outside of our industry. And this is where I'll ask you to take your dealer hat off for a second and put your consumer hat and walk through some of these experiences that I'll share with you from my personal shopping journeys. What better way to learn from buying experiences across industries that customers compare to than Amazon, right? I'm going to walk you through a journey of a few different products that I personally shop for on Amazon. And now to be clear, and I am an Amazon junkie, it feels like every other day, me or my wife have an Amazon package showing up at our door, right? I think a lot of the perspectives that I'll share today really are, broadly held, right? And reflective of the market that we live in today. To put some data to it, I started my buying journey on Amazon in the stories that I'm going to tell you about, right? But that's like 52% of consumers, right? So this is a recent study by Wunderman Thompson Commerce asking where customers get inspiration for products they want to purchase, right? 52% said Amazon. That actually beat out search engines generally by 1 point, right? 19% said other marketplaces, right? Almost head to head with retailer websites themselves. Now, these don't add up to 100% because customers could choose more than one, but it really underscores, one of the first topics we'll explore which is the importance of marketplaces like Amazon, but we'll relate this back to auto in a moment. So, this was late last year, actually. I'm going to go back in time. And, my wife and I had actually just recently moved into a new home. And we were looking at, what we could do to the house. And I wanted to buy some grass seed to, polish up the lawn a little bit. Well, I went to Amazon, right? And typed in, grass seed to be able to run a search. Amazon has the power of almost a search engine because it brings brands and vendors to my fingertips instead of me going to hunt for them. And like most Amazon shoppers, I actually always check the Amazon Prime box because convenience matters to me, right? And being able to get my products fast is super important. So I won't even look at the product without the Amazon Prime box checked, right? And lo and behold, you'll see kind of in that top row, some immediately available results, some of which are sponsored, right? Visibility matters. And the one that stood out to me was the one that had the Amazon Choice Trust Badge, right? And Amazon Choice is this badge that gets put on products that Amazon deems worthy of recommendation based on a whole lots of factors around pricing and reviews, the underlying vendor and whatnot. But cool. found some grass seed. Scott's Lawn Response 911 was the product. I checked it out. It had the Amazon Trust badge, right? Felt pretty good enough for me. Interesting thing though is I didn't actually end up buying this product from Amazon, but I did end up buying this product, even though I found it on Amazon. I'm going to come back to what happened in the rest of the story in a moment. But in terms of lessons that we can take away, even in automotive retail, around why marketplaces are important and how we can compete in marketplaces, lessons for dealers, right? Apply equally. This applies equally in automotive. One, convenience matters. Customers demand and will pay for convenience. In the context of Amazon Prime, that's the example we talked about. I'll share with you how that translates in automotive. But visibility matters, right? Just being seen isn't a silver bullet, but being seen is definitely a first step. And trust. We talked a lot about trust in terms of exchange and guarantees in the earlier dealer examples, but in this example, right, leveraging third-party marketplaces reviews, I trusted that Amazon Choice badge, even beyond doing a ton of research myself. So those are some of the lessons we can pick away from this quick story in shopping on Amazon quickly. But let's talk about how that applies to automotive, because we're all car people here. So in any retail ecosystem, there's brands, there's retailers, and there's marketplaces, right? In the traditional retail ecosystem, if I was buying a TV, think Samsung, Best Buy, and Amazon. I could shop and buy and discover in all three of these places. In the automotive context, right? You've got the OEM. So I might go to, in this instance, Subaru's, OEM website. I might go to the individual dealer's website. So that's Subaru, Ramsey there. Or I go look on a marketplace, right? Including something like autoTRADER.ca, of course. And you may have heard the partnership that we at Motoinsight announced with AutoTrader last year to enable commerce on autoTRADER.ca. And we've taken a lot of the lessons that I just shared with you from Amazon and already applied them. Started applying them in automotive. So whenever I go and toggle that Amazon Prime box on Amazon Marketplace, we expect that to happen in automotive, where you can do that today on autoTRADER.ca and toggle on the buy online box to see vehicles that you can actually shop for and step through a transaction with online. Sponsored listings in the Amazon Marketplace obviously has an easy equivalent in AutoTrader called priority listings. But even beyond that, right, that Amazon Choice badge, you can't get a great price tag in autoTRADER.ca if your price isn't actually great. And so a lot of those learnings from Amazon that you're seeing, what works with consumers in regular retail, is already happening in automotive. And in the digital retailing experience that we enable for autoTRADER.ca, customers actually can do far more than just simply fill in a lead now. Being able to step through even things like merchandising and selecting F&I products and accessories products beyond just building out a core deal and completing a transaction with a credit card deposit or a credit application done completely digitally and completely online. The sneak peek is we're really excited about this partnership because it's actually having impact, right? These are some of the stats that we released last year from our early pilot across VDP views, the traditional leads from autoTRADER.ca, and even the lead to sale conversion. When digital retailing is enabled and you hit the note with customers around convenience, around visibility, around transparency, customers love it. But as dealers, you get more volume and higher quality, right? Customers want digital retailing, convenience resonates, and digital retailing drives that. The experience of the future, really in our view, looks something like this. By allowing customers to be able to not just find and select very well merchandised vehicles online, but actually be able to go through that checkout experience that you've come to know and love in every other retail sector, right? Being able to complete more of the deal, whether that be accessories, F&I products, more of the deal. Be it being able to build out detailed payments on real pricing before even stepping foot into the store, virtual appraisals from home on your mobile phone, online credit applications, that eliminate paper and PDFs, But then also being able to pick up exactly right where you left off in the store, whether you reserve it with a credit card deposit or not. Being able to shop at your pace, at your time, whenever you want. And if you do decide to go into the store without skipping a beat, being able to continue that journey. That's the experience that we're starting to see take hold in automotive. That is what customers expect in other sectors, but still novel in our industry. So let me go back to Amazon and finish the rest of my story around my personal buying experience. So found that grass seed, right? But the issue is, and this is the drawback of e-commerce, and where you as dealers have an edge with your physical presence and your wide inventory selection, is it was a Saturday when I was looking at this. Looked at it in the morning. I wanted that product right now, right? I didn't want to wait for delivery. So what did I do? I actually went and then looked up a local retailer that actually had the product. In this case, it was Canadian Tire, right? Pricing, in fact, was a tiny bit more expensive, but I didn't mind because I could get it right away. I went into the store, was able to see exactly the product I wanted, where I wanted it, knew that it was in stock and available, and I went and bought that product. Right, so you can see how the power of marketplaces was super important, to get me to discover this product. But in the end, the local retailer, and the store with the physical presence actually won. So, one more story from Amazon. As part of moving into this new house, we were looking for a new TV, right? And again, as often as consumers do, and I did, I started my experience searching on Amazon. And in fact, Amazon is a really great discovery engine where brands have actually started building out experiences to discover products inside of the marketplace. And so, you see here, I was looking at a TV and I could, learn about even the difference of SDR and quantum HDR, right inside of Amazon Marketplace, because Samsung had built out this experience. I went through that experience, found the TV that I was particularly interested in. And, that's great. They had it available. But you know what? It was a pretty big purchase. And, as much as I grew up on the internet, I actually wanted to see, the TV in person because these things look different. This was prior to the, current lockdown environment where you could actually still go to stores. So I actually went, was able to go to the store, take a peek at it. And you know what? Found the store that had it, went to the store, checked it out, bought it on the spot, but then bought it in the store for home delivery. Right? So you can see how, again, when you look at traditional retail experiences, and I'm sure many of these hopefully resonate with you in your own shopping journeys, right? Physical stores still matter and are absolutely an advantage for dealerships. So this is your moat, right? Exploit it. In this world of online retailing, availability still matters, right? So access to inventory and availability, as a differentiator for you as a dealership, is a defensible advantage. Your in-store experience, cars are physical purchases. Nothing replaces that touch and feel. Right? And then finally, services. The car itself is just the beginning. For many of you dealers, after sales is bread and butter. And that will continue to be an advantage for traditional dealerships. Okay, bonus round. One more example. As we round the corner towards the end of this presentation. I was recently, looking for a toy to, keep me occupied during the lockdown. So, looking for a Nintendo Switch, right? Even in this silly little purchase, there's lessons learned, for dealerships. So, in this experience here, you'll see that actually Amazon does a tremendous job, in merchandising F&I products, even on something like Nintendo Switch, right? But when I go ahead and click that add to cart button, you'll also see one of the ugliest pages on Amazon, and anybody that's bought anything on Amazon has gone through this page, right? This is their checkout experience. Right? You might have a lot of criticism about this page around the fact that it's pretty empty. Right? There's not even a back button on it. Right? But it guides you from click to purchase, leads the horse from a path to water, and there's a science in simplicity in driving online conversions. So in that simple little silly purchase, again, and another lesson for dealers to take away. Merchandise F&I products in your online storefront, just like you would in your physical storefront, right? 90%, I think, or more of dealers miss out on this opportunity. You wouldn't let a customer go through a sales process without talking to them about F&I in your physical store, right? Why would you let them do that in your digital storefront? And I think really thinking about your digital storefront as a storefront, a real storefront with customers going through that experience is a mind shift, right? And then also simplicity is good. I think we've all seen far too many dealer websites with banners and buttons coming in from all different places, a dozen different calls to action. In the Amazon example, there is a beauty to simplicity. Fewer calls to action, clearer path to purchase, lead the customer from first click to purchase better. And so, I think when we look at that retail ecosystem, really all three are important, right? We work with a lot of automakers, across Canada and even into the US, where we're helping automakers at the OEM level develop and deliver the right consumer tools to help engage customers deeper and allow them to do more online. But many of you dealers probably have encountered those OEM programs that we work on. But at the same time, it's critically important to ensure that you at the retailer level, in your store, on your dealer website, have a strategy to enable the new kind of customer experience that customers have come to expect from other retail sectors, but is quickly becoming status quo in automotive as well. And then finally, marketplaces are a critical component that are a missed opportunity without proper engagement. So to recap, right, we talked about Carvana a ton around how Carvana is this big disruptor in our space and is changing everything. But when you really look at it, right, there are absolutely things that we as an industry can learn from Carvana, but dealers, when there is a willingness to, absolutely can adapt and compete. High quality vehicle merchandising, right? Investing in this is more important than ever before as customers are going deeper into the purchase journey and making decisions before they necessarily even get to step foot in your store or see the product in person. Transparent, upfront, competitive pricing. Gone are the days where being able to force customers to come into the store in order to offer pricing. They simply will get it from you or someone else. The ability to offer both seamless online and in-store shopping experiences, where customers can start online, move into the store, or start in the store and finish online, like many of the examples that I shared with you, in other retail sectors, is critical. I know today, in the midst of this pandemic, it feels like in-store shopping has changed forever. Well, it'll come back, right? And particularly, in automotive and such a touch and feel experience, really do believe that your physical presence is an advantage. In any experience, being able to stand behind the product with a guarantee to give customers to confidently transact with you. That's a key theme that we're seeing, whether it be Carvana or any of the dealers that we talked about that are making big pushes into allowing customers to transact online. And then finally, shout it out, right? I can't tell you how many instances where I encountered dealer friends and partners where they sometimes look at a Carvana ad or a Vroom ad or some of these new ways of buying a car. I saw it on LinkedIn the other day, a dealer musing about rooms, another Carvana-like competitor, recent ad, and asking her peers, like, what's so different about this, right? We've been delivering cars, quoting customers online, doing this for a very long time, and I absolutely agree. But that last point, I think, is key. Shout it out. Tell customers that there is a new way to buy. I think build it and they will come isn't a strategy that can stand on its own. And as I mentioned, dealerships have advantages, right? Availability and access to inventory are absolutely differentiators, and your in-store experience will continue to be important, but not to the exclusion of your online experience. You have a physical storefront, right, that you invest a ton into, from a customer experience standpoint. You have people staffing it, you've got the fancy coffee, you got all of that, right? Ask yourself in your digital storefront, right, how are customers being engaged, how are customers being treated, and treat your digital storefront traffic and customers, in the same way, with the same care as you would with your in-store customers. I'll wrap with a quote. This is from a Deloitte report, actually, a few years ago, but it remains ever more true today, in my opinion. Retailers are now seeing customers compare their buying experiences across industries. And the old adage, that's how it's always been done, is increasingly inadequate. And that, I think, really sums it up. If you take anything away from this presentation, is look at the way you buy and the way you shop. How, whether it be furniture or appliances or anything in between, how that has changed over the last 5 years, 10 years, right? I think we're going to see more change in the next few years than the combined decades ago in our industry, because customers are already there. They've already seen that change. COVID is a catalyst and an accelerant, to that adoption. But as you evaluate your own experience, that you offer in your stores and in your digital storefront as car dealers, compare that against your own buying experiences in your own life across other retail sectors, and ask yourself, are you living up, to the new bar and the new standard? And so, with that, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Wish it was in person, and really look forward to being back in person again sooner rather than later. But thank you, and looking forward to the Q&A discussion.
Thank you, Andrew. Great content, and I think reassuring, for everybody. For everyone from dealerships listening in, you can do it. You can future-proof your business. A lot of what you're already doing is what's required to take advantage of this new era. We want to help you, want to work with you to help you take advantage of that and future-proof your business. But it doesn't have to be this kind of big, scary thing like Andrew mentioned. The Carvana, is the valuation emperor's new clothes. Who knows? It's not that different to what you've been doing for a long time. But there are aspects and technologies that we need to embrace, and operational changes perhaps that we will need to embrace in order to do that future-proofing. And one thing that Andrew mentioned there was around the integration with the marketplace that we've made between Motoinsight and AutoTrader. Incredible performance there. The 12% lift in VDPs, 36% in leads, and really incredible 80% lift in lead to sale conversion. That's unbelievably impressive. If you want a piece of that, then I'd encourage you to go to go.trader.ca/digital retail. Now, when you get there, you're going to learn a little bit more about that integration, and you'll be able to submit your details. So, no obligation kind of call and a chat about what it is that you're interested in looking to achieve. But one thing I must say is that you'll see on that page that we've had a few offers, kind of introductory offers that were actually expiring in April with that integration. And with the Motoinsight tool. So, given there's only 10 days left in April, and we are so passionate about working with our dealer partners and facilitating this evolution into the new era, I think I'll sort of go out on a limb here and I'll say, if you fill out that lead form in the next, like this week, let's say, we'll make sure that we help you out even though that offer is expiring very shortly, we'll help you out and fix up some kind of introductory deal, because it really is important that as many dealers as possible embrace, integrate, and get started with this digital retailing, both on your dealer website, but most importantly on the marketplace, because that's where those incredible lifts are coming from. And we want everyone to share in that, because that's what some consumers are looking for, a growing cohort of consumers. So thank you very much, Andrew. Okay, I think now we're bang on time. We are moving into our second poll of the day. So again, please participate. You get the answer right, you'll go into a draw for the $100 Amazon gift card. And the poll will be appearing on the right-hand side of your screen in a few seconds. The question is, with regards to the digital retailing on AutoTrader Pilot, what was the overall percentage of growth in leads realized by dealers with digital retailing enabled on their VDPs on the AutoTrader marketplace? Was that 12%, 20%, 26%, 36%? I think I made that one very easy by what I was just talking about, but let's see. Give you a couple of seconds to choose your answer, and then we will reveal the correct one. Yep, 36%. Unbelievable. Okay, cool. So now we're going to move into the final stage of our afternoon together, which will be the Q&A. Welcome back, all of our expert speakers here, smorgasbord of expertise. And you all have been really good at submitting questions as we've gone through the presentation. So, I have some here that I'm going to put to our panel. So let's see here. Okay. So first one, I think, Bryan, I think you're going to be best placed to answer this. So question was really around, okay, so, we saw how, according to your third-party data in terms of marketplaces, you had AutoTrader as the biggest in every province, and then Kijiji. But what's the trajectory on that? How have you seen that change? So, maybe if we look to, I know you guys take about 4 to 6 weeks to kind of scrub your data and make sure it's all on point each. So I think the latest Comscore data is February. Yeah. How's that changed year over year, AutoTrader and Kijiji? What's that trajectory?
So it's, interesting question. And I think, as we're ongoingly measuring the marketplace, and what we're seeing, if you're just looking year over year, Feb 2021 versus Feb 2020, we've seen an overall growth in the total internet population by 3%. On the automotive internet information resources category, we've seen a growth by about 9%, moving from 12.1 million Canadians to 13.3 million Canadians. AutoTrader Corp has grown by about 28% in terms of traffic. We've seen Kijiji's decline a little bit over that time period by about 5%. And some other players have also seen some nice growth. So AutoGuide growing by 28%, Driving.ca by 24%. CarDriver.com growing by 34%. So we've seen a lot of growth in unique visitors. Similar at that time, we've actually seen a little bit of changing behavior where there's been a lot more visitors, but a little bit less of visits. So maybe people are getting the information they need without having to go lots of times. And we've also seen a small decrease across the board in terms of time spent or engagement per user or minutes per user. So a little bit of a changing behavior. Again, I just want to be clear that we don't just work for Trader. And so that's why I want to give all of the data points there. And you're not the only one that's growing, though you are growing significantly. So as they say, mazel tov. But, you also, we want to be third party and want to make sure, but we are seeing a little bit of change in behavior and engagement changing and visitation changing, and obviously a lot more eyeballs, which is great overall.
That's great, Bryan. No, as you should. Like I say, we want to be transparent about this stuff, and that's one of the reasons, other than obviously the interesting insights, that we wanted you to be with us today, because like we said, just let the data do the talking. So AutoTrader plus 28% year over year, Kijiji minus 5%, which, okay, I must give my consumer marketing team a pat on the back. That's good. Okay. Another question on Comscore for you, Bryan. I guess it's hard for you, and maybe this is also one that Baris and I can speak to, because it speaks to leads a little bit. So the first part of the question is, the whole question is, Kijiji was the highest for desktop. I think that was right from your presentation when you ranked sources. AutoTrader was the number one on mobile. So I think first question is, can you just remind us of the context to that? What's the delta between first and second place on desktop and mobile?
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to pull this up. I do have it right here. So
yeah, no worries.
I don't know these things off by heart. Thank God. So when I look at here, I got the data right here. So when we look at the overall, unique visitors to AutoTrader, you're looking at about 4.6 million unique visitors total. When you look at Kijiji, you're looking at about 3.2 million, AutoGuide 1.7 million, Driving.ca 1.6 million, and 1.3 million for the internet brands Automotive. Now that's unduplicated, both desktop and mobile. So just a reminder there, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 because you have duplication of people going to both. Mm-hmm. Now, when you look at that specifically for desktop, you're looking about 1.4 million for Kijiji and 1,330,000 for traders. So there's about a variance of 80,000 unique visitors that are in favor of Kijiji.
So there's very little in it on desktop then. There's very little in it. Is that?
It's fairly close. So there's kind of, call it 5% variance. Uh-huh. But when you're looking at Trader, Trader in mobile had about 3.6 million unique visitors, and then Kijiji had 2.1 million unique visitors. So there's a variance about 1.5 million.
Okay, I see. So on the desktop, first and second place, not a lot in it. On the mobile, AutoTrader is significantly bigger than Kijiji. And I guess that explains why in aggregate there's a big delta. Okay, thanks, Bryan. So that was the first part of the question. The second part of the question was, which platform drives more leads, right? So this is cool, this is good. This is what we were talking about when we say, it's not all about size and quantity. Size isn't everything. So this is a great question. Which one drives more leads? Now, Baris, you're the expert in this realm, but I believe that what our data shows is that on a per visit basis, desktop platforms are more likely to convert to a lead than mobile. And I think that's to do with kind of just the usage scenarios and stuff. Obviously, desktop, you tend to be sitting there and you're the users in the situation and the zone to submit a lead, whereas mobile, they could be out and about, they could be on their way to a dealership, like that kind of thing. It's a little bit lower. But I mean, what do you see in terms of lead conversion between the platforms?
Yeah, Ian, I think you nailed it. The conversion rates are higher on desktop because it's the experiences slightly different compared to mobile. In mobile, what we see a lot of the VDP generation, as you stated. If you're at the dealership, if you're moving around, and if you're a line at Tim Hortons looking for your next vehicle. So conversion rate is compared, like VDP to lead conversion rate is lower, but still we see a lot of conversions coming out from both platforms, mobile and desktop.
Gotcha. Thank you, Baris.
Yes.
Okay. Next question. I think this one is best suited to you, Andrew. Will the future of vehicle purchase be fully online? So I think I recall from your presentation that you were looking at the CarMax data and some other stuff, and it was like 10%, never visited the dealership. It's either delivery or curbside. And you were talking about, the potential for that to grow. Will there ever be a future where it's, we talked about seamless in the interim, online and offline seamless experience. That's where it's at for the next few years. But do you see a future where it's 100% online, a la Amazon?
I don't see it where all automotive transactions move online. I think that's where it'll always be a combination. You just simply look at some of the data that we reviewed together from Boston Consulting Group as an example, where it looked at other retail sectors. We don't really need to make predictions in the blind, right? We've kind of seen this story play out before in other retail sectors. I think a growing segment will look to complete the entire purchase before stepping foot into the store. So CarMax is a bit ahead of the curve. They're already at 10% of their customers doing that, buying entirely online before they even step foot into the store. I don't think it'll ever be 100%. The data from BCG, is projecting it, following a similar curve as other major retail sectors like furniture or electronics. But I think the key is, and CarMax lays out really nicely, that all three customers matter. Those that want to shop entirely in store, those that want to shop entirely online, and those that are going to be a combination of those. And I think that's where the majority of the customer will be, for a very long time. That they just want the convenience of being able to do as much as they want online before starting to go into the store, or the inverse of that. And if you look at, if I look at my own buying behaviors in other retail sectors, COVID notwithstanding, that's very much the case. Sometimes I want to go into the store for a range of different reasons, right? And that's where I think online only retailers will be at a disadvantage. That's where for dealers that can offer both the online and in-store seamlessly, that's where the sweet spot is, right? And even just looking at Amazon, they are primarily an online retailer, but I think they recognize that physical retail still matters. That's why they bought Whole Foods, right? To have a physical footprint. And you look at Walmart, who's really holding a candle to Amazon's rise from an e-commerce standpoint. They're doing so by leveraging both their physical and digital capabilities, and I think that's the key takeaway for dealers. It's both.
Makes a lot of sense, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, I must say, from the research that we've done at Trader, it supports that, right? Where depending on the stage of the journey, like the appetite to conduct things like finance arrangements and things like that online is 70-80% of users want to do it. And then as you move through the funnel, it's less and less to the 100% online thing. So I think seamless is the key word here. Online, offline, optionality, like all those three customer groups matter. And as you said, in fact, some customers might be moving between groups. They might be attracted by the idea of buying online, but when it comes to it, no, I want to see this thing. So seamless and optionality, I think, are the key things to focus on for dealers. I agree.
Absolutely.
And related to that, so another question, sort of similar kind of topic. This is an interesting one. So question is, what is the relationship between the average listing price or selling price with cars being sold online? So specifically, this person's asking, what's the average listing price of a car on Carvana? So I guess if you do know that, even anecdotally, it's interesting. But more generally, I think maybe they're getting at, is this more suited to a particular type of vehicle, a class of vehicle, like, more expensive, less expensive? Is there particular cars that consumers seem more willing to want to buy online?
Yeah, I think there's 2 points to be made here. One is a demographic question, and really convenience is ubiquitous. We see across the network that we work with, full range of brands from entry level all the way to luxury. Every demographic values convenience. They may use the online experience for a number of different reasons. But I think this is where it's funny, through the pandemic, my parents learned how to buy groceries online, and I don't think they're ever going to go back. So again, convenience is ubiquitous, right? So I don't think it's a question of demographics. Maybe there's a higher propensity in some than others, but I wouldn't rule any demographic out. No, it's really just about convenience. I think the second point is around, will customers pay for convenience? And while research is one thing, the cool thing is being able to actually look at the data of some of these publicly traded companies like a CarMax or a Carvana, right? And what's interesting, two anecdotes. One in the Carvana instance, their penetration of in-house Carvana financing is ridiculous, phenomenal, right? And yet at higher rates than what traditional lenders will offer, but seamless, one-stop, completely digital, right? That's where proof is in the pudding. Their finance penetration, notwithstanding they're not the most competitive from a rate standpoint, is customers voting with their wallets and paying for convenience. And then I think the second thing is, there's this misconception that online transactions may be less profitable for dealers, right? And the data coming out of CarMax is actually materially different than that. They see it as an opportunity to actually increase total gross. They're not seeing degradation, on the front end. In a number of instances, they're seeing actually consistency when every customer is shown F&I and accessories, and they're given the opportunity to shop and educate them at their own pace. Just as effective, if not more, penetration. And then finally, I really enjoyed Cathie's presentation around really thinking about the entire business and how to reshape the business. Well, for CarMax, one of the big opportunities that they see is in that same breath, being able to do higher volume with fewer resources, because customers are doing more on their own. So the ability to lift overall margin profitability on a per vehicle basis is absolutely there. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I encourage dealers to dig into those two stories, and those aren't the only two stories, Carvana and CarMax, but provide some really good indications of how this is an opportunity for those that want to be aggressive and play offense.
Yeah, well said. And actually, an extension of that, another question here, because you were just touching on kind of operations and how those things change. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, and Cathie also, as someone who's really in it, running a dealership. I'd love your thoughts as well. So the question is at the 2021 CADA Summit, apparently there was a dealer in Quebec, and the way that they'd sort of set their stall out was they had a dedicated sales team. So, a sort of sequestered sales team that was just for the online channel. Is that a good idea, splitting up sales teams? I guess by extension, having different sales teams for different kinds of leads or customers, is that a good idea operationally? Andrew and then Cathie?
Yeah, what I would say is no store is exactly the same as another store, and I think depending on the availability of staff, there's a lot of different approaches that can be successful. Across the country, where we work with dealers of a bunch of different brands, urban versus rural, luxury versus mainstream, BDC, no BDC. We've seen online retailing and digital retailing success in all of those cases. So I think it's not a one size fits all. I think it's really understanding the benefits and challenges of each model, and there are some challenges, right? But when you look at Carvana or CarMax, they have gone the approach where they have a dedicated team, that services these customers. But I've also seen it work, by having traditional sales staff learn the digital world, because truth be told, in my opinion, it's not really digital retailing. It's really just retailing. At the end of the day, this is how transactions are going. They're all digital retail transactions, sooner or later.
And Cathie, what are your thoughts on that kind of operationally? Is the sales skill set kind of applicable to all kinds of customers and leads, or have you any experience?
Yeah, I think kind of building on what Andrew was saying. I mean, it is all retailing, and it's all relationship based. It's just that I think people who are more attracted to a digitally based process are going to have different expectations, both in the process and in the relationship. And some of our best suited showroom salespeople can't make the leap to, what creates a really good relationship in an online transaction, and vice versa. Some of the best people online, you wouldn't necessarily want sitting in front of a customer per se. So if we do get to the point where we're seeing more online transactions, which in our specific store, we haven't yet seen a lot of demand for it, but I do know dealer friends that have. And I do think that the two jobs at the end of the day, it is retailing, but you're going to have people that are successful in, for opposite reasons with the two processes.
Agree completely. It depends on the skill sets that you have in your store, and it depends depending on the store.
So case by case basis, use your best judgment kind of thing.
Basically, yeah.
That's the answer to most things in life. Great. Okay. I don't think we have any more questions. I do want to be completely transparent. There's a couple of questions here that I'm not going to ask our panel because they are very product specific. So I want to be transparent, not ducking them at all. If I didn't ask your question, please feel free to email it to me directly, ian.macdonald@trader.ca. I'll make sure that we open a dialogue around those questions. The only reason I'm not asking it now is that on our panel, I don't have the people that are working on those products with that product expertise to give you a straight answer kind of thing. So send me those questions. We'll follow up on those. We'll open dialogues on them. But that kind of concludes it for the other questions that we had applicable to this panel. I guess I'll just kind of go to each of you and just, any kind of final thoughts or closing remarks in order of speakers. So starting with you, Baris, thanks very much for your presentation today. Look like reasons to be optimistic. Outlook looks promising.
Definitely. And I mean, as you know, we've been looking at the industry as a whole for quite a while. And regardless of what perspective we look at, the signs are positive. Things are looking up. So fingers crossed. With hopefully we'll go through this third wave pretty soon, and good news is around the corner.
Good stuff. Thanks, Baris. And Bryan, looks like from your standpoint, you're standing back looking at the whole kind of internet consumption. Things look pretty buoyant, right, in terms of consumer demand for vehicles and interest?
Yeah, I think visitation obviously is where it needs to be. We've seen an uptick. I think Andrew said it well. There's a sort of a continuum that happens, and I think consumer comfortability is a big area of ways that consumers move through it. I mean, you see it in the banking industry. We saw it online e-commerce. We started with books. People only bought books and DVDs. Remember what those were, and then they move along a continuum. And I think what it became very clear, and it's become clear in my business and the data, is we're seeing that continuum move now. Visitation, and then you get in tenders, then people starting to buy things, and then people are moving along that continuum. And I think with automotive, you're just going to continue to see people move down that path and have greater comfortability. And visitation is one key indicator. Engagement is another. New players and demographic shifts. We're seeing all of that happening, and I think a lot of that data is aligning well for this industry in particular, especially coming out of COVID.
Sounds good. Thank you, Bryan. Cathie, so we're hanging in there, but adapting, changing. I think you mentioned that you've had some good months of profitability in the past kind of 9 months, something like that. So we're kind of rolling with the punches. But any final thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, it's easy for the dealers, and I'm sure there's dealers in the audience that are listening to these presentations, and the great stories that Andrew has for some US retailers. And we're going, well, this doesn't translate to our businesses today. And that may be true, but just because where they are today doesn't translate to where we are today, start taking some baby steps. Try to maybe reverse engineer some of these things. You might not end up in the same place as CarMax or Carvana, but you certainly won't be in the same place as you are today. So be open to looking at changing everything from the footprint to your sales staff to your online presence. And you might end up with an interesting hybrid that is just more successful than where you would have been if you kept rejecting where other dealers are going.
Well said, Cathie. Yeah, embracing change, right? It's important in all aspects of life, especially business. Thank you, Cathie. Andrew, any final thoughts from yourself?
For sure. I think, there's a lot of change coming. It's not, there's nothing we can do to fight it from happening. But I'd encourage dealers to look at it as an opportunity to play offense. Whenever there's massive change or innovation or disruption happening, you can play defense or you can play offense. And I think, there is a massive opportunity to win here. And traditional dealers, aren't not in a position to do so, as we talked about, right? Like there's really nothing, aside from a lack of willingness for change that traditional dealers can't, step up against versus, the Carvanas of the world. So play offense.
Play offense. I like it. Exactly. Okay. So I guess just lastly from me, just want to recap because there was a few things that we talked about today, specific products and whatnot. Not a shill. I just want to make sure that everybody knows, where to go to find out more information. We talked about vAuto. That's the provisioning tool that helps, acquire, price, inventory for profit. Go.trader.ca, dealer products, inventory management. Learn about vAuto. We spoke about PL Max. That's our latest upsell product, cross-platform. Ride that wave of mobile growth that Bryan was showing us. Get involved with this new product. It's an evolution of our old traditional priority listings product. Same thing. Go.trader.ca/dealer products/marketplace/listing upgrades. And then lastly, digital retail. Go.trader.ca/digital retail. Put your information in there. No obligation. When we reach out to you to have a chat, mention that you watch Carology and that you're responding to Carology, and we'll hook you up. Okay, so with all that said, it falls to me to kind of say thank you so much for our speakers. Really, really great content. Fantastic to hear from both, inside of Trader, what we're seeing with our data, things like that, but also externally, it's just as important. Weaving the story together. Always fascinating. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. And I know presentations do take time to prepare. So hugely appreciate to our speakers. I want to say thank you to the Trader team who put together this event. I think we're getting more and more adept at doing these virtual events, which we could look at, sadly, or it's a good thing kind of thing. Makes it a bit easier for us all to attend when it's not physical. We can just grab 2 hours in the day and share some time and some insights together. But well done to the Trader team. Very good event. And then most of all, thanks very much to the audience, be you dealers, OEMs, anybody in the industry who have tuned in and joined us today to learn about some of these insights and share some of the things that we feel we want to share and that are important for us all to be aware of going on within the industry. And like we said, I think there's reasons to be optimistic, which is always a good note to close things like this on. So thank you very much to everybody. There will be a post-event survey coming into your email inbox in the next week or so. Please do fill it out. Let us know what you'd like to see more of, what you'd like to see less of, any kind of speakers, suggestions that you have, that kind of thing. This Carology event is for you. It's for our audience. And that's what really matters. We want to know what you would like to see, what you would like to hear, what we can go and find out for you. So do fill out the post-event survey and let us know right there. We'll also include a link to the on-demand video so you can share that with your colleagues or watch it again yourself. And we'll announce those 2 winners of the poll questions for the Amazon gift cards. So lastly, thank you very much to everybody. Do stay safe, and we'll see you again next time for Carology. Thanks very much.